Tonight I'll read Chapter 3, The Warrior. Blocking their exit from the landing bay was an enormous, primeval-looking head, almost as long as the kayak. Its skin was night black, but the light from the street lamps on the bridge picked out the ridges and protuberances on its scales, outlining its form in spectral detail. The head was crocodilian, but with the blunt, half-formed look that prehistoric creatures often have. Its mouth was open slightly, the wet, crooked nostrils raised as high as the prow of the kayak. Emily could have reached out and touched them. The deep, rasping noise of the creature's breathing seemed to fill the landing bay. The uncanny fear that had preceded it, that filled Emily's thoughts and overwhelmed her reason, continued to batter against her like a hurricane. She stared, hypnotized, into the creature's open mouth, saw the rows of yellowed, back-curving teeth streaked with dark, bloody stains, felt its nauseating, reeking breath slowly suffocating her. She forced herself, trembling with horror, to look away from the looming jaws to its eyes. They were shiny black, but within them a green flame roiled madly, an eerie light that made her think of the spirit lights that lured travellers to a watery death in fog-sodden marshes. A small part of her brain registered that she was now on her knees, leaning towards the creature, reaching out to it, as if offering herself was the only way to bring the awful fear to an end. She began to slip helplessly forward over the prow of the kayak into the waiting jaws. But as she did, she saw her father's face again, wearing that strange expression he'd had as he came down the stairs, and her heart turned over and she was engulfed instead by a terrible fear that without her something dreadful would happen to him. It was a fear so sharp and so painful that it brought tears to her eyes, and it so utterly banished her previous fear of the creature that she gasped as if she had suddenly seen daylight after a lifetime of darkness. And, even more strange, she suddenly became aware that the uneasy feeling that had been at the back of her mind all evening, and that had been an occasional presence in her thoughts throughout her life, had also gone. She blinked away the tears, breathing hard, and steadied herself in the kayak. When she looked again in the water, the creature had gone. For a few moments she stared at the spot where it had been, shivering with cold, hardly able to believe that she had survived. Odin's eyeballs! Sam swore behind her, his voice trembling. That was the scariest thing ever. It was going to eat us, wasn't it? And all I could think of was that it would be wonderful if it did, because then the fear would stop. He shuddered. Emily nodded. Same for me. Why didn't it attack? We were sitting ducks. Emily leaned over the side of the kayak and fished her dropped paddle out of the water. I don't know, she said. She couldn't believe the creature's departure had anything to do with her thoughts about her dad. Maybe it decided that a couple of kids weren't worth the effort. If that's true, then I've never been happier to be ignored, said Sam with feeling. I felt like a chicken in a bear cage, with my chicken feet glued to the floor, and a sign round my neck saying, "Eat me," in bear language. Emily sniggered. So you're plucky to still be here, then? Sam snorted and flicked water at her. Ha ha! What was it, anyway? I mean, it looked like some kind of ancient crocodile, but that fear thing was really nasty. Emily shook her head. I have no idea. Did you see its eyes? It was like there was a green fire burning in them. I've never seen anything like it. It has gone, hasn't it? Said Sam. I mean, I don't feel scared anymore. At least, he added wryly, not as scared as I was. A violent crashing, like the noise of a rock fall smashing through a wooden house, echoed suddenly around the canal. Voices were raised in alarm and fear. Emily spun round to see the creature attacking one of the patrol boats in the middle of the canal. A speedboat was already in pieces, its prow jutting up at a crazy angle, its stern under water. White foam glittered in the darkness where people struggled in the water. The creature was half out of the water on the patrol boat's deck, thrashing wildly, its huge weight crushing the middle of the boat until with a hissing plume of steam the boat caved in. Several people were flung from the cabin into the water. Emily thought that one of them was the important man who had stopped the search earlier. The creature freed itself from the wreckage and disappeared under the water. Emily watched in horror as one by one the patches of white water that marked someone in the water went black as the creature struck from below. Another patrol boat was trying to rescue the remaining swimmers. Several wardens on it were reaching down to pull one of them up into the water, out of the water onto the deck, when the creature launched itself out of the water beside the boat and slammed down on them with the force of a falling tree, smashing the boat instantly and causing it to capsize. Water churned and boiled as the creature struggled in the wreckage. One of the two remaining patrol boats pulled up alongside, and there was a sharp crack and a puff of glowing smoke as the wardens on it fired a rocket-propelled net at the creature. The net tore into the water and wrapped itself tightly around both the creature and the remaining parts of the shattered boat. A ragged cheer went up. The second patrol boat arrived and fired a second net, which also bound itself tightly around the creature. Chains ran from the nets back to the boats and prevented the creature from retreating into the depths. It struggled furiously in the water, its huge body sending up plumes of spray. "Bring in the dredger and get that thing aboard," shouted the warden with the megaphone. "Take it straight back to the Abbey. See how those worm-loving monks like a taste of their own medicine." The dredger, a long, roofless barge with a large empty hold and a low crane with a claw-like grab attached to one end, started to edge out from under the bridge past the first of the two patrol boats, pale smoke drifting up from its engines. The chains holding the nets had been tightened and the creature was held securely between the boats, its struggles for the moment having subsided. The front of the dredger with the crane drew level with the creature, and the crane was swivelled out over the creature and the grab dropped. The heavy metal claw caught in the heavy net and chains, and the whole mechanism, screeching and groaning, started to rise, pulling the creature up with it. The dredger started to list heavily with the weight of the creature, but fortunately didn't seem in any danger of capsizing. Sam breathed a sigh of relief. "Thank Fry. I don't think I could ever go on the water again if I knew that thing was still in there." "Why do you think they're taking it back to the Abbey?" Emily was puzzled. "Maybe they think it escaped from there or something." Sam shrugged. "Who knows what those monks get up to in there? I mean, no one's seen inside the Abbey for years." Emily frowned. It almost sounded like they thought the monks had released it on purpose. Why would they do something like that? Maybe it's a religion thing. That thing terrified people and then ate them. What's religious about that? Sam suddenly pointed towards the bridge. "Look, what's that on the bridge? Is that a person?" Something moved onto the bridge. It was a person, slender, dressed all in black, hooded, its face covered by a plain, almost featureless black mask. It jumped athletically up onto the parapet above where the creature was being loaded onto the dredger. "What's he holding?" Sam strained to see in the dark. It looked like a long, thin pole with a tip that glittered in the lit light from the street lamps. "Is that a spear?" With a swift, elegant movement, the black-clad figure threw the weapon at the creature. The spear flew true and plunged deep into the creature's back. The creature roared and started to thrash about in agony. Without pausing, the warrior leapt lightly down from the bridge, down onto the deck of the dredger, a drop of nearly 20 feet, then ran up the dredger, and then made a huge leap from its side onto the writhing creature's back. Emily and Sam could barely believe what they were seeing. Almost dancing to counter the creature's erratic movements, the warrior ran up the creature's back to the embedded spear and wrenched it out. The creature bellowed in pain and fury. The warrior steadied on the creature's back and then raised the spear to deliver the killer blow. As the spear drove down into the back of the creature's neck. There was a loud, sharp crack from up on one of the overlooking roofs, and the warrior staggered to one side as if punched violently in the shoulder. Before the echoes of the first shot had died away, a second shot rang out, but the warrior was already falling limply and soundlessly into the water, leaving the spear embedded in the creature's flesh. The creature redoubled its struggles, clawing at the nets in desperation, severing the tough cord with tooth and claw and sharp-ridged scale, until, with a final, violent wrench, it burst out of its bonds and sank into the water and disappeared. Emily and Sam stared, dumbfounded. There was no trace of either the warrior or the creature. Wreckage floated in the water. A strange silence fell. Emily shook herself to break the trance. "We've got to get out of here." "They shot that man with the spear," said Sam wonderingly. "He was only trying to kill that creature. Why would they shoot him? That's crazy." "If they catch us here, who knows what they'll do," said Emily. "We shouldn't have seen any of this." Her hands were shaking. "We've got to go," she repeated. They were clumsy with adrenaline, and it was difficult to do even the simple task of manoeuvring the kayak out of the landing bay. Sam swore. "What? I've dropped my paddle in the water. Fish it out, then." "It's not the fish I'm worried about." "Pick up your own paddle. Come on, now, we're leaving." "Yes, Captain." They slowly paddled back across the canal and into the side canal they had come down earlier, barely able to see where they were going in the darkness. As soon as the scene was behind them and out of sight, they felt better. Sam switched the headlamp back on. Its warm light was reassuring. "Let's go home," he said. His voice was calm again. Emily smiled to herself. If the kids at school who thought Sam was soft had gone through what he had just gone through, she didn't think they would have coped so well. Sam was a strange kid, but a good and brave one. Something bumped the bottom of the kayak. "What was that? Did you feel it?" Sam's voice was not calm now. Water broke in a ribbon of white foam to her right. Emily nervously took a torch from her pocket and shone it on the water. The water swirled as if something had just dived beneath the surface. A stream of bubbles rose and burst. "Sam," she started. Sam said flatly. His voice sounded strange. She turned away from the water to look at him and saw with horror the enormous, black, scaly head of the creature rising up out of the water beyond him, illuminated in the beam of the headlight. Green flame guttering around its open jaws. She felt the pressure wave of fear burst against her as the creature launched itself with a mighty thrash of its tail out of the water. As it fell towards them, feeling already the cold spray of water that preceded it, she realized that this time there would be no escape. And that's the end of chapter 3. Good night.